Hi, and welcome to Tips for New Health and Physical Education Teachers, How to Survive Your First 3 Years. My name is Dr. Kymm Ballard. That's me, there on the left, and this is Kayla West, there on the right. Kayla was one of my students at Campbell University and is a second-year teacher, so I enlisted her help in trying to make sure that I was, focused on reality of things that can help teachers, not only the research and what we do in pedagogy, but to make it real for those K-12 teachers. So I thank her first of all for helping me with this. And this was a presentation I urged her to do at our state convention in her second year, and she was a little scared, but she got in it and did really well. And so I want to thank her for participating and kind of helping me pull this together. A little bit about me, Dr. Kymm Ballard, and I am a professor at Campbell University, in which I am in charge or the coordinator of our teacher education program. But I come from a long background of education, having taught in middle and high school, elementary for a little bit, athletic director for a little bit, was assistant principal for a little while. And then I went to the Department of Public Instruction, where I spent about 9 or 10 years, well, 11 years there, and before moving into corporate world. And I went into the education corporate side of things to see a different view. Stayed there for about 9 years, and currently, as I said, I'm the coordinator of health and physical education, teacher education, and man, I love my job. But I hope that you'll find this presentation helpful. Some of it research-based, and then the other is just plain old common sense that Kayla wanted to be able to share with you all. I'd be remiss if I didn't start with a little bit of research. So I looked at a variety of different things on why, physical education or health education teachers quit in their early years. There's nothing really very specific to any one teacher, but I found lots of things on why beginning teachers were overwhelmed or what helped them make the decision to get out. So I kind of summed them up. I found this one document that really summed up a lot of them, a lot of the research together. And what I found was this. Top 4 reasons. That one is little to no preparation. So, but this is talking about, were you prepared to get into teaching as well as you should be? So it addresses the higher ed perspective. Did you, learn everything you needed that you could walk right in? Maybe have a mentor or something and work well and not get too frustrated and too discouraged. Most people can't do that. It takes a lot more. But the second one is lack of mentoring. And so that lack of mentoring is, the research shows that if you have a mentor when you're in your first and second years, or even up to third and fourth year, that it's very helpful. You have somebody to go to and talk to, who's who and how to do things. One of the things most people are not prepared about is grading and or assessment of students. And also class management. Those rank up in like the top 2 for assessments and class management skills. How do I, gather kids around? What are my stop and start signals, etc., which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But mentors can help with that too, as well as sort of the politics that go along with schools, who's who and what's what that you need to know. The third one are working conditions. So this is the support of your principal or somebody else. If your principal is not supportive of you, it makes it very difficult. And for some young teachers, or even not, regardless of age, just not having been in the system very long, learning how to do that, work with people where you're not supported is very, very difficult. I'm going to give you some tips on that today, though. Hopefully that it won't get you too discouraged. Maybe you can find a job somewhere else, or maybe you can bring these principles along with you. But also other colleagues, like people in a learning community that you could have in your PE network or a learning community. And then the fourth one, which is pretty true, is that about 20%, you earn about 20% less than other people with a degree outside of your field. Teachers just aren't very well paid. That's why you got to figure out, why did you get into teaching? What is it that brought you to teaching? Because teaching is a gift. And that gift is, something you have to love to do to persevere. And you got to be able to figure out ways and get through and around and over some pretty big mountains sometimes. When do you hold them? When do you fold them? Again, one of those reasons why preparation, mentoring, and having good working conditions support helping the fact that we make less money than other people in our field. So These are the things I want to address. Let me tell you the tips up front, and then we're going to talk about each of them separately. First of all is why. Why do we do what we do? Why did you get into this? What is your why? Also, being prepared. How can I help see that you were prepared, or to help you be prepared as time goes on, or if you don't have the support you need? Teachers that are not prepared have about 2 times higher rate of leaving, so it is a little more tough. And then the third one is relationships. The fourth one is self-care. And then fifth one is professional development. So these were the tips that I thought were the broader categories, and let's talk about each one of those a little bit differently. I lined them up this way. Being unprepared, whether it was through the university or, maybe you just felt like you had great education, but you just, were missing some things. We're going to talk about that in our tips for being prepared. Mentoring is about relationships with people, definitely. And we're going to talk about relationships with people and with children. The conditions you work in. So we got to think about that professional development. How do you get that? How do you do that? And how do you self-care in those situations? What are some ideas and things you can do? Not just about yourself, but the way that you run things in your class. And then last, your salary. And really the only thing we can continue to think about is your why. Why do you do what you do? I play this sound, these are Kayla's kids, and I play this a little bit because I just want you to remember that sound a lot of times is what we live for. It may help you, remind you of your why. Many of you probably got into teaching because you wanted to make a difference in the lives of others, that you had a desire to help others, or maybe you just liked being active. Sometimes it's because you knew you couldn't sit behind a desk. You thought this would be fun. Or many were athletes and wanted to coach. For whatever reason you got into it for a reason that was meaningful and that could be helpful in the long run. In teaching, you have an opportunity to make a mark and leave some of that with students, to create a love for students to be active and healthy. And it's the best gift you can ever give anybody. So take just a second and think about your why. What is your why? Why did you get into this? Maybe jot down a note or two, or pull up a thought. I want to read a poem that makes me think about this, and hopefully it'll help you. No matter what grade level you are out there or what country you're in, think about this in the context of kids coming in and what happens when school actually starts for a kindergartner, and what are the things that they're going to change over life. Dear teacher, I bequeath my student to you today, a little girl in a crispy dress with 2 brown eyes and a happy laugh that ripples all day, a flash of light brown hair that bounces in the sun when she runs. I trust, teachers, that you'll treat her well. She's slipping out the backyard of my heart this morning and skipping down the street on her first day to school, and never again will she be completely mine. Prime and proud, she'll wave her young and independent hand this morning and say goodbye and walk like a little lady down to the schoolhouse. Now she'll learn to stand in line and wait the alphabet for her name to be called. She'll learn to tune her ears to the sound of school bells and deadlines, and she'll learn to giggle and gossip and look into the ceiling with disinterest when a little boy across the aisle sticks out his tongue at her. And now she'll learn to be jealous. She'll learn how to feel hurt inside, and when she can cry and sometimes not cry. No longer will she have time to sit on the front porch on a summer day and watch the ants all scurry across the cracks in the sidewalk. Nor will she have time to pop out of bed with the dawn and kiss the blooms in the morning dew. No, now she'll worry about those important things like grades and which dress to wear and who's her best friend this week. And the magic of books and learning will replace the magic of her blocks and dolls. And she'll find new heroes. Well, for 5 years now, I've been her sage, her Santa Claus, her pal, her playmate, her mother, her friend, her father. And now I'll learn to share her and she'll learn to worship her teachers, which is only right. But I will no longer be the smartest woman in the whole world. Today, when that school bell rings for the first time, she'll learn what it's like to be a member of a group, a different group than family. And it comes with all its privileges and its disadvantages. She'll learn in time with proper young ladies when to laugh and when not to laugh, or to kiss dogs, or keep frogs in a pickle jar in her bedroom, or even watch those ants scurry in the summer. But today, she'll learn for the first time that all of those people that smile at her are not her friends. And I'll stand in the front porch and watch her start out the long, lonely journey to become a woman. So world, I bequeath to you today a little girl in a crisp dress with 2 brown eyes and a flashy light of brown hair that bounces when the sunlight hits it and she runs. To you all, I trust you'll treat her well. Author Dan Valentine. And I love that poem. I share it with my students because hopefully it'll help you understand that, for parents sending their kids off to school, they trust us. Every grade level, they trust us to do what's best for their kids. And that's the kind of environment, of course, that we want to have and we want to do. So tip number 1 is know your why. Why are you doing this? And hang on to that, your philosophy of why you got into this profession. Number 2 is about being prepared. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of different sections of this. And first of all, one of the things I do with my students is I make sure that they're well prepared with curriculum. If they have that, if they have a scope and sequence, and I hope you know what that means, but if not, the scope is what all you're going to cover throughout the year, and the sequence is what order does it go in. Because there's some things, as we know by biomechanics and motor learning and other subjects, is that there needs to be a sequence of this growth in order for kids to actually learn it. And then what block plans are we going to have? Or maybe you call them unit plans, or what are you going to do within that unit, and how are you going to space that in the right sequence? Lesson plans, that maybe you have lessons that need handouts, and maybe you need cue cards for stations or something like that if you're going to use them. Do you have assessments? You need to be able to assess kids. How are you going to assess them? And you may, as young teachers, have to show this in the beginning. You may have to, a lot of my teachers have struggled in the past to write lessons, try to do assessments. And just because you write a lesson doesn't mean it's good. I don't mean to put anybody down. It could be good, but just because you wrote it and you gave it your best doesn't mean that it's good, age appropriate, scoped and sequenced, blocked, etc. So that's why I like people to start off with a prepared, developed curriculum. My student teachers and my first year teachers have come back over and over and over and said, I don't know what I would have done without the Spark curriculum. That's the one I've recommended to my students. It has all these things. There's others out there, so you certainly do check around. But using a developed curriculum that has all of these things certainly can help you grow as a teacher, but also be able to meet those demands so that you're not staying up all night trying to get everything done. But having a curriculum is one part of it. What are the procedures and guidelines that you're going to have? How are kids going to come in and then exit? Now, some people talk about this as elementary. They walk in, do they sit down? Middle school and high school, do they walk in? Do they sit in lines? Do they do rows? How you check and roll? All of those procedures, you have to figure out how you're going to do it, and you're going to do it as quickly as possible, and you're going to get kids active as soon as possible. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, research shows that if kids are moving, they're preparing their brain to learn. So we want kids to come in, get a little energy out, or get their energy up, whichever the two may be, and then put them somewhere that you can explain what you have to do, take your role, or take the role while they're doing what activity it is that you want them to do. But set a procedure and a guideline, or how you're going to enter. And the same thing with exit. If they're leaving, if they're dressing out, what's the procedure for that? How much time do they have? You have to practice that. They practice getting dressed and coming up in a certain amount of time, and then they get practice getting back dressed in a certain amount of time. If I were you, and the research shows in many of the early education books that I've read and used for teacher preparation, is that you need about 2 to 3 weeks to practice these procedures with the young ones. Yep, I said that. 2 to 3 weeks. Why would we spend so much time on that? Well, if you'll remember, one of the big issues is classroom management. So these procedures and guidelines that you establish are going to help you with that classroom management. If kids know what to come in and do, and they have routine, then you know the research that helps get them active as soon as possible, get that brain flowing a little bit, then give them directions in little bits of time, bits of pieces at a time, and do all the other pedagogical things you need to be doing. I try not to overwhelm you right now because there's a lot of things that we do. What about starting and stopping? Have a signal. What are you going to do to use start and stop? They can put the ball down between their feet, or whatever instrument or that they may be using, or rackets, down between their feet and eyes on you. They can squat where they are, get down to one knee, clap 3 times, stomp 3 times, or something like that for them to follow. Have a funny horn. I use music a lot, and you can use music with all grade levels as long as you use it appropriately, and it's good, music that you're able to use within schools. And what about taking and setting up equipment? So equipment, one of the things I teach my students is to have different hula hoops around the room, because a lot of people have hula hoops. If you don't, use ball bags or something that contain equipment. And then have those around at least 4 stations if you can, or if you need, depending on your class size, you may need more. And what happens is, once you've explained what to do and you tell kids to go get their equipment, in those hula hoops or in those ball bins, you're going to have a variety of different things that they could use. So if you're doing hockey pucks, you might have some hockey pucks, but you also might have some bean bags. You also may have some balloons, depending on if you're, how small a group are you using. But you may have plates for kids to move around on or to use something with. So it just depends on what you're doing, but have a variety of different things, including some homemade equipment that can be there for kids to have choices. Kids go get their equipment, they come out, they participate, we do our class, and then it goes back into that same bucket or that same hula hoop when they finish. And they also can run and switch out equipment at some time. If one of them's not challenging them enough, they can go get a bigger or smaller or wider or rounder kind of an instrument. Longer handle, smaller handle implement. But let them have some of those choices. And when they take it and put it back in the hoop, it's ready for the next class. Conflict corners. So again, we all know that no matter what happens, they're going to mess up. There's going to be conflict, and there's going to be some behavior that we need to work with. I think that what we have seen lately in these conflict corners or solution corners, they call them all kinds of different things. It's where we're going to have a place where students know to go. We're going to walk them through this in the first couple of weeks so they know exactly what they need to do. You don't have to walk with them every time through it. A student, once they've learned it, they'll go to their conflict corner and they'll be able to work out whatever it is that you have them to do. One example is to have, if 2 kids are in some sort of a spat, that they go to the conflict corner, they have to work it out, talk it out, write something down, and or if they can't get to an agreement, they have to back up a step if it's on like a ladder stepping scale. And you have questions for them to ask and go through. Here we're teaching them how to handle conflict. And that's one of the things we say we do in physical education. We need to be sure that it's what we're doing in physical education. So conflict corners have become really good as well. Another good thing to help with procedures is, especially for the younger ones, for those of you that are elementary, although stations are good for everybody, especially those of you in K2. Putting things in really small-sided, opportunities where they get more tries on whatever it is that they're practicing can really help with managing those little ones. These are from Kayla. And Kayla also has this greeting card when her kids come in. How do you want me to greet you? Do you want to do a mic drop? Do you want a fist bump? Do you want a hug? Do you want to smile? What is it that you want? You want to hear your name? What do kids want? Now, this is elementary-ish, but certainly you can do it at any grade level, not necessarily in this capacity. What might it look like for you at a middle school or high school? For me, in college, what it looks like is that I have a paper that kids fill out and they introduce each other. And one of the questions is, how would you like to be greeted? And then after we play the name game with the ball, we toss around and trying to remember everybody's names. After we've done that a time or two and get some names down pat, then the next question is, instead of answering your name, you have to answer how you want to be greeted, how you like to be greeted. And sometimes kids can get kind of funny. I've had some things happen. You have to kind of like, well, is there something we can do, do that we can both feel comfortable about, etc. And so, yeah, and some days it changes for kids. Like some days they don't want a hug. They don't want you to touch them. They might just need, a smile. The next day they want to give you a hug. So it just depends, and you have to be careful, obviously, within grade levels, looking and thinking about what your reactions may be as to how you greet kids when they first come in. You have to have those high expectations, but you have to plan for the misbehaviors. So this was Kayla's chill. She calls it the super chill zone, and she used technology to draw up this, her superheroes thing with some rubrics, etc. She has a desk that sits there. And so I'll show you what some of those things say here in a few minutes, or in the next slide. But you can see the setup. And so this is for one student. Now there's another, if you have two students, you would have two pieces of paper, two chairs, or they may have to just stand there and discuss. But the student does this alone. They go over and they have to do this alone. Now she taught elementary, so this was a good example of that. So in the conflict corner, as you can see, there's the instructions to take a reflection lap. They can walk, run, whatever they want to do. Depends on their, what they need. And then come back, and then they have a worksheet. I don't know if you could see that from a while ago, but there's a worksheet there on the left that has the smiley face and then another one right beside of it. Come back, complete their worksheet. If they need to apologize, then they need to do that. They need to check in with the teacher. You can ask, see the worksheet, see where they are, and then they're ready to get back in. But again, we're helping kids learn how to deal with conflict and recognize the conflict, but we're not punishing them in horrible ways of embarrassment. And see that list on the left, kids have to decide, are they out of control? Which one do you think you're most like? And they have to kind of pick one and be as honest as they can. Remember, again, you train them for this. The first 3 weeks we talk about it. We talk about how honest you need to be, why we're doing it, how we learn from it, etc. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is about relationships. And I have found that whenever you have a student-centered focus for your classroom and for your relationship with students, things work much better. Student-centered means you're not a directive. You're facilitating a lot. Kids have some input in what they do. Yes, even at the smaller levels, all the way up, and it probably gets more that way as students get older. So here are just a few things that we can do too. Number 1 is not to use physical activity or exercise as punishment. I'll take you all the way back to one of the first couple of slides. What is your why? And if your why is there to help make kids healthy and active and make a difference in their life over time, then we can't turn them off to physical activity. And punishing kids through physical activity, research has shown that does that. So we can't use research as punishment. Now, we can disguise fitness when we do fitness activity drills or something like that. You can use your conflict corners, of course, if you need something like that. But just try not to send kids out and use them and use exercise as punishment. Sometimes there's some things you can do as far as if you're doing some skills, they may step out of an activity, practice that skill several times and come back. That would be okay. But we don't want to punish them. We want them to be working on something that's going to help them improve. The second one there is the 80-20 rule. How do I know when to move on with my kids? I'm seeing them all do what, seeing how they're doing. And how long do I stay on that lesson? Too many young teachers, and even some older teachers, more experienced teachers, do this. They teach their lesson and it's done. And it's about the lesson. I got through that lesson, I put it up, and I go to the next one. No, 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 no. You may stay on that lesson for 3 days. You may stay on that lesson for 1 day. You may stay on that lesson for 30 minutes. It depends on the students and what they can do. And so that's why you over-prepare, just in case you get through what you've already done and you have time left. Because when about 80% of your kids can do whatever it is that you ask them to do for the amount of time or the amount of height that they were trying to get, etc., whatever the drills are, then you move on to the next thing. You need to challenge them more. Now, you don't just leave the 20% behind. that 20% behind may have to still do and work on the areas that they need to work on, but you need to move that 80% forward to the next lesson. But making adaptations for that 20% to continue to still grow. So you don't leave them behind, but you also don't, you don't want that 80% getting bored. You've got to move them along. So what happens if 80% doesn't have it? We need to reevaluate. Maybe it's me as a teacher. Maybe I didn't teach it well. Maybe I need to use different activities. Maybe they just need more time to practice. Whatever that is, you have to evaluate that. And that's what you're doing when you're walking around and looking and evaluating while they are teaching or while they are practicing. Another one is try to watch out for winners and losers. When we're talking about student-centered focus, it's more about those that are challenged and skilled. Those that are skilled move on. Those that are challenged still, that are trying to get the skill, they need to go and continue to work on that 20%. We're talking about that 20% of the students. Be careful about this yard picks, what we call schoolyard picks. That's where two people stand up in front and call out names, call out people, and tell you to be on their team. Well, and we see this, I don't know if any of you watch Survivor or some of the games on TV, but they do that, and they call it schoolyard picks. And I don't know if you've ever been picked last, but that is humiliating. It is hurtful. And a lot of physical educators haven't been picked last because they were an athlete, or they played, or they were pretty athletic. They went into the profession because of it. But that means we just really don't know. We have to understand what those other students feel. So try not to do that. One of the great apps that I use is called Team Shake. Teamshake. It's an app you can download. And on the back end of that app, once you get all your students in, you can help control without anybody knowing who's in what group. So if you know that Jane Doe and John Doe cannot participate in the same group ever because of whatever happens, then you can set that up in the app. But they won't ever know it because all you do is shake it up, throw it on the wall, let kids see who's on what teams, or you write them out and show them how it came up on the iPad, and then there they are, they go. So you can also divide by skill level. You can divide by gender, which you don't really want to, but you can also make sure if you have a lot more girls than you do boys, that there's enough boys on each of the teams. So you can set it up from behind. That's called Team Shake. Use a variety of different teaching strategies, as many as you can. Do something different all the time. Use jigsaw sometimes, use stations sometimes, use group activities sometimes, use small group, large group, use small-sided games to build up things, but use a variety of different teaching strategies. You can find a lot of these online. Strive to enhance their self-esteem every day and show them that you care. Those are just two critical things. Positive feedback is more important to kids than you ever realize. Even if it's constructive feedback in the skill that they're doing, that shows them you care. When you're walking around the room, don't just walk around because you're counting the time. Are you really looking at them? Are you really trying to help them improve? I challenge you to challenge yourself on that and to make sure that that's what we're doing when we're watching students go around the room. But building those relationships with your students is very, very important. It's not the only relationship, though. You're teaching more than just curriculum. You're teaching little humans with big emotions. Other relationships are like people in the school. I say this, make them smart before you make them mad. What does that mean? Well, if I know that there's been something that happens in my school, in the gym that day, or outside on the field, or in the classroom, wherever I might be, and something happens, and I know that my principal's going to get a phone call. Best thing you can do is make them smart before you make them mad. If you go in and you let them know, hey, just want to let you know, you might get a phone call today, here's what happened. You set yourself up for success. Your principal then knows that something's coming, they can give you feedback, they already know if it's going to be a problem or not, and then they can handle the situation and back you up. But when the parent comes at them first, and your principal knows nothing about it, it's a lot more trouble. So let your mentor know, your department chair know, your principal, when something happens, make sure that you make them smart before you make them mad. The next one is make friends before you need them. Nobody likes you to run to them only when you need something. So make friends with the cafeteria folks. Make friends with your principal. Make friends with your Title I coordinator. Make friends with your Title IV coordinators. Make friends with your school improvement team. Anything and anybody, be kind was one of the things we said earlier, but make friends before you need them is one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you as far as building those relationships. Your janitorial staff, man, everybody is equal in your school. They all have an important job, right? And you want to make friends with them before you need them for something, because you will need them. You will need them all at some point. Volunteer. Try to volunteer for things at school. Don't just be stuck in your bucket. Sometimes we have a hard time as health and physical educators to be stuck in our area, not attend teacher meetings, not attend IEP meetings, not to volunteer for Secret Santa, not to volunteer and be engaged in the school. It's critical. If we want people to understand how important our field is, we have to understand how important theirs is. And we have to help them understand what we need. And we do that by volunteering at times. And then just be kind. Let people know you because you're kind. Tip number 4, self-care. Part of that is not taking your mood out on your students, right? Just as some of you might have been athletes, and just the same thing, you can't carry your anger, your mood, your downness, whatever it might be, out on the court. Well, you don't want to do that to the gym, to the students either, because kids deserve your very best, the same as you deserve their best. So no matter what happened that morning when you got to school and you saw that car there and you're like, oh my gosh, or you're running 2 minutes late, or whatever the reason is, or you broke up with your spouse or something. There's things that are going to happen in life. Don't take a mood out on your students. Keep it in a student-centered environment that's a safe and loving environment for them. But it also helps you to change your mood and get out of that. Do the thing you love the most, which is your job. Follow through on what you say. Yes, that's part of self-care, because you want to be known for that person. You want to follow through on what you say. You want to be able to be proud of those things. It helps your endorphins. It helps people trust you, and trust is part of that as well. Now, I tell my kids, save your voice, use a microphone, especially gyms that have, or even classrooms or wherever you might be, that the acoustics are not very good. Yeah, you're going to have a hard time. And so 10 years of that, if you stay at the same place, your voice is going to take a strain. And there's really some research out there on that, so you should check that out. Use a microphone if you can. Decorate the gym for both of you. Who says it has to be just for the kids? You need that positive feedback too. What can you do when you walk in and it's a bad mood that you can look on the wall and see your favorite saying? It's okay that the kids don't understand it or that they don't know everything that's there. So as long as it's appropriate to be on the walls at school, what can you do? What can you put up that's going to help you in your mood as well? Be fair to yourself and be fair to your students. Kids will love you. You'll have less problems when you can pull them over and say, now, have I always been fair or what? And they say, yes, ma'am, you have. I'm being as fair as I can do it right now, right? But when you're not fair, it makes it difficult. But establish yourself as being fair. But be fair to yourself. Take time for yourself. Be nice to yourself as well. So have a hobby, something that you can do to forget school, forget what goes on, and get out and just spend time for you, because you do need that time. Ask for help when needed, for sure, because you will need it. And then forgive yourself. Forgiveness is very important as well. You know that you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to spell something wrong. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to make a wrong decision. You're going to say the wrong thing. I will on this video. Things happen. Just know that and forgive yourself. But you know what? The kids will forgive you. They'll still love you. Some of them may not even notice half the time. So just know they're the most forgiving that we have, unless we, embarrass them and hurt them. But if you have a student, focused classroom that's a safe environment for them, where we're encouraging them at all different levels, they're going to love you. They won't be able to help it. Tip number 5, professional development. So the first one here is professional learning communities. See, I messed up. Forgive myself. The first one here is professional learning communities. So go to conferences if you can. But nowadays, there's a lot of online conferences, and a lot of them are free, just like this one. So continue to do your professional learning as much as you can through conferences. And in the United States, we have state organizations for health and physical education. If you're international, I'm not sure what you might have, but think about what organization that you would join. And some people will only join if they're going to go to the state conference or go to a conference. I say no. This is your profession. This is an organization that's standing up for you, that's fighting for you, that's representing you, and you need to be a member of that organization, whether you can go to a conference or not. So join your state organization. Not only that, they do a lot of free things. They advocate for you. They can send you free information. So they do a lot, and encourage you to join your state organizations. If you're on Twitter, follow hashtag PhysEd or hashtag HealthEd. You're going to see a lot of information on Twitter and Voxer. So social media has really grown in helping us with what's going on out there. Now, I will encourage you to look at things and study them, though, because everything out there is not great. And you're getting a lot of information already. Once you get on Twitter and see it all, and you see things on Voxer and on this Google Drive, share drive, man, it's overwhelming. And you just think everything is good. Well, one of our health education goals, standards, is to recognize accurate information and know where to find it and make sure that it's accurate. So here's what I say. For that Twitter, Voxer, and your Google Drive, anywhere you're getting professional development, does it fit your framework? Go back to that very first slide that had, the curriculum, the planned curriculum development. You don't have time to have Fridays off. We don't have time to just play fun games, right? Because we got too much to do. So you want to look for the things that will help you with the curricula that you have set forth. You want to look for different teaching strategies, not just new games, not just activities, and look at it and evaluate it. Does it fit? How will you change that game? You don't want to play it the exact way John Doe did on Twitter because he adjusted it for his students. Adjust it for your students. And then find that accurate and appropriate lesson is hard. It really is. You do have to look at them, and you have to try to look through and analyze these lessons to see if they fit within the framework that you're working in. And the same goes for the Google Drive. There's a ton of stuff out there, a ton of stuff online, lessons everywhere you turn around. And just because they're popular doesn't mean they're accurate, age appropriate, or meeting a standard, or meeting your framework. So there's a lot to think about when you have all those resources online. Now, the physical education folks and health education folks will share information. They will share everything they have. All they ask is that you give them credit for it. Don't steal it and call it yours and put it in a presentation. We don't do that. Just say, hey, this was developed by others, whatever that might be. And here's an example. This was developed by someone else. It certainly wasn't me, but it is one of those things where you can look at it. It's got live links, and it's not going to pull up now, but these are live links, and when you click on them, then it'll pull down and give you like all the people you need to follow on Twitter. You might give, if you want an adapted physical education teacher, go here and click on it. Here's all the people you can follow on Twitter. So this is a great PDF file, and you can take a picture of it right now. I think that would be a great idea. I'm trying to figure out, and it may be on the website somewhere. And if not, then you'll have my Twitter contact at the end that I'll be glad to share with you anything that I can. So those are the main tips. Don't forget your why. Be prepared. Build relationships. Practice your self-care. And always get professional development. Here's my Twitter account and my Instagram. Most everything that I have is at Kymm Ballard. And here's Kayla's. And it was fine to put her Twitter account there as well. So if you want to follow her, she's just going into her third year of teaching now. So she's, really willing to talk to others. As a matter of fact, would love to have people follow and email and send her stuff, and you send them stuff, and she can give you any part of this presentation that she's done. If you're interested in any of those things, she'll be glad to share with you as well. Now, finally, this is your resource page. Again, take a picture snapshot of this, and I'm looking for a place to be sure to put it where you can just download it and work that out. But if all else fails, there at the very bottom, it's at Kymm Ballard on Twitter and just DM me, send me a little message and say, hey, I was on the webinar, the Charge Up school stuff, and I wanted to make sure that I get some information. The one beside it, which says Phys Ed Help, that's a second Twitter account that I have. That's where I just post grants. So if there's grants open and you're looking for funding, I'll just post grants on there. Now, it doesn't buzz off very much because there's not a lot out there right now. But I will put them on there. And so when you go to Twitter and you want to look up grants and stuff, you may find that Phys Ed Help and then put the alarm on it so that you'll get a notification when I do put something out there, because that's all that goes on it. Are you not on Twitter? Well, Google Twitter 101 by Joey Feith, Feith, and you'll be able to set yourself up on a Twitter account. Shape America has a ton of resources for people that's here in the Americas, but anyone can use them all over the country. They have our our national standards there for health and physical education. Health Moves Minds is a new social and emotional learning curricula and lessons and stuff that's been created with we call them calendars and lots of lessons to help kids. So if you're looking for something around social and emotional learning, it's free. You just have to sign up, and it's just download and use. And then we'd love to hear how you're using them. The second bullet there are Phys Ed, at PH at home. That's what people are using right now as a Twitter handle. So in Twitter, you can search by that. Just search hashtag HPE at home, and it's going to bring up all the lessons that people are creating and developing right now during this COVID-19 coronavirus time, where we're at home. Kids are at home. What kind of lessons are we sending at home? Now, once this virus is over, I think there's going to be a ton of stuff there that we can still do at home. So, for example, if you only see your students one day a week, well, these lessons are going to maybe help enhance you so that kids can get more at home. So they can do PE, at home for a couple of days. There's the health education and the secondary phys ed hashtag for those of you in middle and high school. Voxer has the same groups. If you get on the Voxer, I can tell you more about that one as well. Just didn't want to overwhelm you with too much. But it has the same thing as groups. So there's a lot of secondary folks just sharing by walkie-talkie. What are you doing? How did you do it? Send me a Google Drive link, etc. Spark PE, I told you that's what I recommend for my students. There's resources there and professional development if you need that. There's a link. PE Central also has some professional development and some lessons. Open PE has some lessons as well. The page that I just showed you, that was right here. If you're interested in that page, it's the one here that says who to follow on Twitter. Who to follow on Twitter. So if you write that down and just click on that one, it's going to pull up or put that in your browser. It'll pull up a PDF and you'll have that link, and then you can just click on that link and start following people. I hope that this has been helpful to you. It's been helpful for me just to remember and review everything. Certainly here to help you if you need anything else. And I'm just so thankful to Adam for allowing me to share these resources and share this time with you. Thank you all. Have a great year.